Is AI going to replace marketers or make the smart ones even more valuable?
Both. Better for the smart, intelligent, strategic person, noisier for everybody else, which is to the benefit of the smart, intelligent, strategic person.
Today, we're interviewing Heather Baker, founder of the B2B lead generation consultancy, The AI Edit. Heather has helped hundreds of businesses generate millions of leads, built and sold her first agency, and scaled her second agency to 8 figures. Today, Heather is helping businesses use AI to reach and connect with potential buyers in a smart and thoughtful way.
Before you touch any AI tool, you've got to understand where its limitations are, because then you won't make the obvious mistakes. The temptation is to outsource your thinking to AI.
Heather has an MBA from London Business School, master's in psychology, and she is a certified brain coach. She has been nominated for 20 awards and won 14 of them, including Ethical AI Leader of the Year in 2025.
What is the one thing that you can do that the people around you can't? What's your kind of unique perspective? Because that, no one can replicate that, no one can take that away from you.
Welcome to The Creator's Adventure, where we interview creators from around the world hearing their stories about growing a business. Hey everyone, I'm Brian McAnulty, the founder of Heights Platform. Let's get into it. Hey Heather, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
Yep, excited to talk with you today. My first question for you would be, what is the biggest thing that either you did or you are doing that has helped you to achieve the freedom to do what you enjoy?
Oh, it's a great question. I built a business, sold it, and then started again. And I would say, having done it and gone through the process has been unbelievably liberating for me, because the second time round, I don't care about all the things that I cared about the first time round that were for my ego and not for anything else. So I don't care how many staff I have. I don't care how big my offices are. This is it, the whole office. I don't need a business card. I don't need a big, fancy, shiny anything. I am doing this business entirely the way I want to do it. And that is the most liberating thing that I've ever experienced.
That's awesome. Well, how did you, what helped get it to that point? Was it because the first business there was either pressure to sell it, either from yourself or investors, or what made it change?
Yeah, I think I was very young when I started my first business, and it was at the start of the global recession. We launched in 2008, and I felt like I needed to prove myself. I needed to build something big. It needed to look good from the outside. In fact, I would say there were periods at the start of that business where how it looked from the outside mattered more to me than how it was performing on the inside. And because of that, I made a lot of mistakes. I invested in things that I didn't need to invest in, that didn't add much value. And I learned from those mistakes. I also did a lot of things right, and I learned from that as well. But I think going into it with that attitude of, I want to be a famous entrepreneur rather than a successful entrepreneur. Most successful entrepreneurs are not actually famous. But I cared so much about my image that I behaved in a way that supported my image. Wasn't detrimental to the business, but I made some expensive mistakes. And one of those, it wasn't a mistake, but I always thought that to have a successful business, you must sell it. If you can't sell your business, you haven't built a successful business. And I'm very glad that I went through that process, and I'm very glad that I sold my business, and I'm very glad that I got to the other side of that process, because I learned a huge amount. But now I realize that being able to sell your business is really only one measure of success. And there are, of course, I'm older now. It was 2008 when I started that business. So being able to sell your business is only one measure of success. And there are loads of other measures of success, like, are you able to have the life that you want while running your business. And I certainly in the first 5 or 6 years of my first business, I was not able to have the life that I wanted while running my business. I was stressed like I've never been before. I ended up with an autoimmune disease. I was working all hours. I had no social life. And would I change it? I don't know, but it wasn't conducive to a long-term, sustainable, happy life. It was conducive to maximizing the potential of that business. Well, I'm not even sure if it was conducive to that, because when you're so stressed and exhausted, you miss opportunities, you're doing more work, you're not working smartly. So I kind of thought you had to sell your business to be successful, to show that you were successful. I now realize that the ideal place to be is where you can sell your business and you choose whether to. So you've built something that is successful enough that somebody else sees value in it, but where you're not so stressed out by it that you're thinking, I don't know how many more years I can do this. I might have to sell this just to get my life back. I think that was the big turning point. But don't get me wrong, selling my business was a great experience. I'm very glad I did it. But this business may or may not be to sell. Doesn't matter. It's about enjoying it right now, every single day, and making sure I can still be a mom.
Real quick, Brian here. You know me as the host for this podcast, but what you might not know is I'm also the founder of Heights Platform. It's an all-in-one platform that over 10,000 creators have used to build their online courses, communities, and digital product businesses. We recently added some awesome updates to Heights AI to help you turn your idea into a viable business. Heights AI can build entire product offers, review your content, and even coach you on how to grow. You can try it for free for 30 days, links in the description. Now, back to the podcast. So I want to talk about how AI is changing lead generation. You're an expert in lead generation. And when people hear lead generation, I think they are generally thinking of like cold outreach. So how would you personally define lead generation in this kind of maybe more smarter or more modern way?
Yeah, so I think of lead generation, cold outreach is a tiny part of lead generation. To me, lead generation is about strategy. It's about building a sustainable, strategic lead gen engine. And the ideal situation you want to be in is the situation where you don't need to do a huge amount of cold outreach, because you have positioned your business so beautifully, you've designed your offer so enticingly, and you've set up your marketing and inbound and lead gen strategy so that it's just naturally landing in front of your prospects. And because your offer is so great and your positioning is so powerful, your prospects see it and they think, oh, I think I need that. Let me get in touch. And the leads just come naturally to you. That is the best position to be in. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes a prolonged, sustained strategy design, and then consistent activity that builds over time and is kind of handled intelligently. That's the best position you want to be in. Cold outreach can be a part of that. But usually cold outreach is because all of that stuff isn't working, and we've got to find a quick way of pulling people into our orbit. And so then you get into all of these overly persuasive, aggressive tactics of we need to send a sequence where we can hit these people 23 times over the next 16 days, and hopefully enough of them will notice that we will get a call. But on that call, we're going to have to do a really hard sell, because these people are a little bit like unsure of what we're selling and unsure of who we are, and they're not really that convinced. So it's going to have to be a hard sell. Half the time, they're not even going to show up on the call. So all of that, not much has changed because of AI. Lead gen, sustainable lead gen, has always been strategic, multi-channel, intelligent, builds on itself, compounds over time. I would say AI has made the strategy design harder, because so many people are popping up with these outbound lead gen agencies. Oh, we'll generate you 10,000 leads a month and we'll charge you $700. Trust me, if that worked, I would be hiring those people. 10,000 leads a month for $700. Of course, I'd be doing that. That would be absolutely amazing. But it doesn't work because for them, a lead is a name, an email address, maybe a phone number for you to kind of pressure into doing business with you. That's just a stressful, high friction way of living your life. Nobody wants to live their life like that. So I think AI has made it harder in the sense that there's this promise, this constant promise. And I think a lot of people are just so excited because we've all kind of almost been tricked into thinking there's an AI button somewhere, and if I push it, the leads will just flow right in. There is no AI button. The leads do not flow in. It takes work, and it takes more work now than it used to. But the amazing thing is, so many people are falling for this AI button myth that if you are just one of the 1% in your industry, and it really is 1% or even less than 1%, if you are just in that tiny, tiny minority who can commit to this, do it strategically, do it intelligently, follow a process and just stick with it, listen to feedback, gather feedback, listen to feedback, respond to feedback, improve, you will be so much more successful in the long run. You won't be more successful tomorrow because it doesn't work in a day or two. It takes a few weeks or months to get off the ground, but in the long term, you'll be successful and you will be resilient, because when LinkedIn's algorithm changes and suddenly LinkedIn was the only place you got all your leads, and now LinkedIn is banning the software you're using to hit people up with your outbound targeting, doesn't matter, because that's only a small part of your lead gen strategy. Your brand is strong. You can recalibrate. You can redirect your resources to a different channel, or you can roll with the punches and deal with whatever LinkedIn has thrown at you and improve. And your brand is strong, so you will improve quickly. Your account's not going to be banned because you haven't been doing anything unethical or anything dodgy. LinkedIn isn't annoyed with you. So it's changed in a bad way and in a good way.
Yeah, it's interesting. So while everybody else is spending all their time looking for what software has that magic AI button, if you use your time and attention to what can actually work, then you can get ahead.
Absolutely. And it really is possible.
So what would you say has maybe like changed the most about lead generation now that we have these AI tools? Like, so if everybody can use these AI tools, what's the most different in how somebody has to approach things if they agree to say, I want to go through this the right way?
So there's two things that I would say represent the biggest change. The first is that you now have the LLM as your audience. So you used to, 20, 30 years ago, your audience was humans. And then 10, 15 years ago, your audience was humans and algorithms, Google's algorithm, YouTube, Facebook, whatever. Now you have three audiences. You've got your humans, you've got your algorithms, and you've got your LLMs. So you need to speak to all three of those audiences in the language that they understand. And if you do that, you will benefit from leads via all of those channels. So, and I'm talking here about AI visibility, as well as SEO, as well as all the other stuff that you do. So that's one of the big changes. There's a new channel, and it's it's daunting because you don't know how to maximize this channel, how to generate leads from this channel. But daunting is a good thing, because if you don't know, trust me, your competitors don't know. There's an opportunity, there's a window. We've got an arbitrage opportunity to go in and seize the value. So I think that is a really exciting change, but it does represent more work and more learning and more having to be on top of things. The second big change is that AI has made it possible, not easy, but possible, for one or one person or a small team to do what used to be completely out of reach of a small business. If you wanted to run an integrated lead gen strategy even in 2022, you would have needed, just producing the content would have taken a full-time job for at least one person, depending on how big your agency, your organization is. And the content production is so important, and that would have been a huge job. And then you've got all the other bits that need to go into that, and you might have needed agencies or people to support with that. And now the content, it can't be done quickly, in the sense that you can't just type into Claude, write me a blog post about lead gen, and then copy and paste that, because it's just going to get slop. But if you are strategic, if you know what you want to say, how you want to say it, if you're confident in your subject, you can work with an AI to produce content at a scale that just was not available to you 3 or 4 years ago. So that is also a huge opportunity for small businesses and creators, an absolutely massive opportunity. And that is all because of AI.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, in like that sense, I think I've seen a lot of people where they are maybe like cautious about like how can they actually approach this? Because on one hand, you see people who are just generating slop, and it's like, oh, look, you can use AI, and it's the same junk that anybody else could make, and so there's no value there. And so I always tell people, it's your unique experience and your unique knowledge. That's what makes the content like you. And so AI can still help you with that. And like, I think one like concrete example of what you're sharing is like, imagine that you go through trying to write a blog post or something with AI, and it's helping you kind of get these ideas out and put the ideas from your head more clearly into actual words. But then even if you end up typing most of that thing yourself, now you can still go to the AI and say, you know what are like 10 other things that people would be wondering about if they read this article that's along the same topics. And instead of you sitting there brainstorming for like an hour about what are some like adjacent topics that I could write, AI just let you know, like, well, you could do this, 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 this. And it might even come up with things that you would have never come up with just because that you weren't thinking that way. And yeah, so you can go so much faster that way. I think I was going to say something again about the audience. So you mentioned that now we have this new audience of these LLMs that are looking at our content. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on like how does the content that we create have to change in order to kind of attract or work for LLMs and not only the algorithms? Because I know like on our end, we've been thinking about this and how like what kind of content is now more important for us to write in this age of LLMs. I'm curious on your opinions on that.
Yeah, I think LLMs are quite good at finding signals that indicate whether you know what you're talking about, which is a good thing, even though it's might feel in the short term like a bad thing, right? Because 5 years ago, all you needed to do was find the keyword that people were searching for and then write a reasonably good post that incorporated that keyword. And you could actually just go onto Google, search the keyword, look at who was ranking for that keyword, and come up with 3 ways to make your post better. And then you would stand a decent chance of ranking for that keyword. Now, and you could do that even if you were not an expert on this stuff. You could blag it because it mattered so much how you fitted the keyword in, and to an extent, you could blag it. Now it's much harder to blag, which is rubbish if you're a blagger. But if you're not a blagger and if you're an expert, this is a real opportunity, because if you know your subject, it becomes much easier to show that you know your subject. And the LLMs are trying to satisfy their users by providing content from experts. So that's what they want. They want to find who is this, like, does this person know what they're talking about, or do they just pretend they know what they're talking about? And so now you've got to show your expertise in so many different ways. Well, firstly, you've got to stop blagging. So if you are talking about lead gen, you need to be doing lead gen every single day. You need to understand lead gen. You need to know how lead gen works. You need to be interested in it. So when you see an article in a newspaper about it, it's the first thing you read. You need to be quite like into it. And that's how you become an expert. And you might not feel like an expert. A lot of people, particularly women, never feel like an expert, even if they are objectively expert at something. It's this kind of, oh, well, I don't know as much as a real expert, but you are an expert in the thing that you work in every day. If you've been doing that job and working in that job for a couple of years, 3, 4, 5 years, you are definitely an expert in that thing. You know more about that thing than almost everybody else. You might not know more than your boss, but you know more than everybody else, right? So I think being an expert, so only talking about things that you are genuinely knowledgeable about, is the first thing, because if you try and blag it, you're just going to seem like slop. And then the second thing is showing, like bragging. Get really cringeworthy in how much you big yourself up. And it really is. Like, these LLMs fall for this stuff, right? If you look on my website, you will see the most glowing biography of me. It lists every qualification I have ever earned, every award I've ever earned, and the sort of thing that you would never, unless you were annoying, you would never drop into regular conversation. You would never, or if insecure, you would never like push in front of somebody that you've just met. You've got to get used to doing that. You've got to get used to talking about your qualifications. That degree you got, put those letters after your name. Like, always talk about yourself as with those qualifications behind you. Talk repeatedly about your years, decades of experience, about the number of customers you've served, the number of companies, the number of words you've written if you're a writer. Talk about it, because those things matter. They really, really matter, not to humans, but definitely to large language models.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think I have to start doing that more, actually, because it completely makes sense that in conversation you wouldn't just I think most of us definitely would not just start mouthing off about like, oh, I have all these awards, or I had all these number of views, or whatever kind of thing you want to brag about. But the LLMs, they're looking for some kind of indication that you are credible as a source.
Absolutely.
And they will believe the things. So I guess they'll try to verify some things, but if you can stack all these things of why you're credible, then the LLM is more likely to say, you know what, I'm going to take Heather Baker as a source here, and I want to tell people about what she wrote about.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I have a perfect example of that. I won an award once, and it was one of those awards where I think I only won it because they wanted me to buy a table at their whatever. I didn't even enter it. I was just received the nomination, but it's on my CV now. Well, Claude brings this up in every conversation about how brilliant I am because of that award. That to me is very, like, I would never even mention it to anybody, but to Claude, this is a real indication that I know my stuff on this one particular subject. And it's just like, please stop putting that in my bio, Claude. No, I don't want it there. It's embarrassing.
That's funny. Yeah, I think another way I would say to like frame how to look at this, if you are trying to think for yourself, well, what is this content that I should create? It's that the LLMs are really looking for what is the new knowledge? What are the things that people are talking about now? And so if you're going to write the same thing that the AI already has in its training data, then it's not looking for that. That's where it's just going to give the answer to the user. But if you can talk about what's going on now and why is it different, or how do things work right now, that's where, like, that's the content that the AI needs, because it has no idea. And so it has to go and search to find that and then give that to somebody.
That is such a good point, actually, because if an LLM can just find it in its training data, then it doesn't need you. You don't need to write this blog post because that is literally the definition of slop. It's just a summary of all the boring stuff that's in the LLM's training data. So I think that's a really good point, is current information and keeping things current for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting how quickly it seems to have kind of shifted, because I feel like if you went back a while, if you went back like 10 years ago, you could say like, okay, we're all writing these blog posts because we're trying to get all of this information into the internet. So if somebody's looking for that piece, maybe they'll find us. But now
Yes.
it's like, well, all the information is there now. And so it's not even arguable at this point, because like now the AI has all of it and can get it for you in some way.
Yeah.
But yeah, the new things are the things where it wants to see things. And I think also, if you are selling if you're selling some kind of product that your customer is going to be like comparing it to somebody else or something like this, I found that like customers have found us because they don't go to our website and like read it and learn all about it. They ask AI and they say, hey, these are the things that are important to me, and this is what I'm looking for. And then they do a deep research or just ask it and figure out like, what does it get back from that? And the interesting thing is customers seem to trust AI because they trust that it put in the work to do that. But then it's your job as like a writer or producing content on your website to try to describe like all the reasons why you might work for these different use cases or for these different kinds of people that are looking for the kind of solution that you provide.
Yeah. And that trusting AI thing is frustrating because obviously AI hallucinates quite a lot more than most people think. But also it's very similar to SEO in the sense that if you're searching for a personal trainer near you, you are going to get the personal trainer who's done the best SEO. That is not necessarily the personal trainer who is best for you. And so it's almost like an unfair, it's a slightly unfair situation, but it's going to be the same with AI, like AI visibility. The companies that are being recommended are the ones that are working on their AI visibility. They are not necessarily the best at what they do. They're just the most visible.
Yeah, I would agree. So if a creative entrepreneur wants to start using AI and they want to get more leads, what would you say is the first thing that they should maybe work on, either when they start using AI or maybe even before they touch any kind of AI tool?
I think before you touch any AI tool, you've got to understand where its limitations are, because then you won't make the obvious mistakes. Hallucination, prompt injection, slop, those sorts of things. You've got to understand what it's good at and what it's not so good at, where it can be helpful and where it's not helpful at all. And I think the temptation is to outsource your thinking to AI. And you never want to do that, because even if it's not dangerous in the sense that it's hallucinated, it's just a waste of time. You're going to really gravitate away from what makes you special and what makes you unique. So I would say if that's before you start using AI, or even if you've been using AI forever, you've got to understand how it works. Like, large language models are rewarded for fluency, not accuracy. You've got to understand how they work, how they compare to traditional software, what the risks are, what the ethical issues are as well. I'm a big advocate for consent. If you data consent, if you're filming somebody, if you're recording a conversation, I think that you need proper informed consent in advance. And you need to know where your data is going as well. If you are creative and you're having a little brainstorm with Claude or ChatGPT and you've got this brilliant idea, make sure you're not feeding it into the training data. Make sure that you have set your data controls so that you're not giving away your IP, because your IP is what makes you special. So you need to be kind of careful about that. In terms of generating leads, I think the most important thing that anybody can do is work on their positioning. So by that, I mean work on deciding and then articulating what it is that you offer that makes you a better choice than everybody else. Because that exercise, it's painful because you've got to kind of work out how to do it, how to position yourself, the questions to ask, the process to go through. It can't be done in an afternoon. It's more of a kind of weeks long process, because you have to come back to it repeatedly. You have to run it past people to kind of get their feedback. But I think if you want to generate leads, the best thing you can do is make it so that people want what you've got. So you don't have to do any persuading. It's just, your life is so much easier if you're selling something that people want. And this is often, in all of my experience generating literally millions of leads for clients, where things go wrong and where the client gets upset, it's when the leads aren't coming in and the client is like, the lead gen is rubbish, the lead gen's not working. But it's like, well, actually, what you're selling just isn't appealing. And I can shove that in front of as many people as I can possibly imagine, but they just don't want it. So I think that is a really important place to start, positioning an offer. And the other benefit of that is that then you can charge more, because you're not in this race to the bottom, selling something commoditized, and you'll just move so much faster. So that's definitely where I would start. I would spend literal weeks on it. And then everything else, you can even mess up other bits later in the process and you can recover quite easily from those. But the positioning, you mess that up, you got to come back and redo it. And you can't get away with bad positioning. Just very unlikely.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I do think it gets overlooked too, how important that is. Because like, if you imagine that, I'm sure so many of the people watching or listening to this, that you have an actual incredible thing that you could deliver for a client or a customer. And then the problem is, how did they know that, right? And so if you had the opportunity to like force them to be in a room with you for a half hour and you could talk to them about it, I think they would eventually understand. But can they understand when they're on your webpage for 10 seconds? Yeah. And that's the problem, because you need to make sure that they do understand, so that way they fill out the form or they buy the thing or whatever they have to do, so that way you can move to the next step with them. And then, exactly as you said, if you get them to that point, now the next step, something can be unclear or whatever, but they know what they want. They know that you have it, so you can clean up any kind of confusions after that. But if they're confused in the beginning and they don't think that you have what they want, then they're going to leave before you get the lead.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's such a waste.
Yeah. So if somebody's going to build this kind of intelligent AI assisted lead generation system, what would that look like for a small business or a solo creator?
So firstly, it's a lot of work, and you need to know that up front, because it's there are no shortcuts, which is frustrating for you, but also great, because if there are no shortcuts for you, there are no shortcuts for your competitors. So you have an opportunity to create some distance between you and your competitors. So I think if you've got your positioning and your offer defined and it's very appealing and just needs to get in front of the right people, you then move to your story bank. So you create a database of stories that will capture people's imagination and get their eyes on you and your product. And those stories need to be relevant, like they need to be relevant to what you're doing and what you're selling, and they need to be honest. And there are loads of ways to do that. I typically do that with a 2 or 3 hour workshop, and you're looking at things that are special to you. So your strong opinions, the things you get so annoyed about, the case study of that time you helped that person do that thing. You're looking at your unique data. And lots of small businesses say, well, we don't have unique data, but you do. You can pull it from your Google Analytics. You can ask everyone you encounter the same question until you've got 100 answers, and then you've got a piece of data. I did a story on my Substack a couple of weeks ago where I looked at the job listings on Anthropic's website and counted how many were for enterprise roles and how many were for small business roles. 0 for small business roles, something like 40 for enterprise roles. That's a story. That's looking at a piece of data in an interesting way. So you build your story bank, and there are a couple of little tests that you need to run. Do I have the right to tell this story? And is the story going to benefit my business, so that you stay focused? And then once you've got your story bank, then you start looking at your distribution channels, how you're going to get this story out to your target audience, your different people. That could be anything. It's normally a massive combination of things. Is that through your AI engines? Are you going to go for SEO, Google search, PR, all the social media channels, email marketing, speaking, podcasting, events, etc.? The possibilities are very many, and you choose your channels and you prioritize them. And I'm a big believer in trying almost every channel, and just giving them a proper go and getting feedback, because you never know. It used to be, oh, well, if it's about business, it's on LinkedIn, and if it's about design and food, it's on Instagram. It's not like that anymore, because Meta has so much data that Meta knows if you're a drilling engineer who happens to be interested in, baking. Meta knows that, and Meta can target people on a very granular level. So then you've got your channels, and you roll your channels out one at a time, and you only ever roll out one channel at a time, because you are a small business, you're a solo creator. You do not have time to be rolling out LinkedIn, PR, search, YouTube, Reddit, events, speakers, podcasts at the same time. So you focus on one channel, you give it a good 2 or 3 weeks at least, possibly a month. You get it set up, you learn how it works, you set up all your automations, you get it into like a bit of a rhythm, and then you move to the next channel. And if you do it that way, they kind of compound over time, because each channel reinforces every other channel. You start doing PR, you've got great LinkedIn content, you've got links back to your website, you've got a very high authority citation for an AI chatbot. So you roll out your channels one at a time, and they each reinforce each other. Your brand builds, and that's how your lead gen engine starts to really kind of hum into action. And then once you've got your kind of first 3, 4, 5 channels up and running, that's when you start running experiments. Every month, it's an experiment. The hypothesis, you test the hypothesis, you get the feedback, and you decide what to do off the back of that. And once you're doing that, you've got your engine, it's running, but it gets better and better and better and more resilient every single month. So that's the approach you take. I've probably spent 3 or 4 minutes explaining it. It's much more in-depth and complicated, but it really is possible for any business, as long as you have done your positioning and offer work, and you're not trying to sell something that people don't want. If you've done all of that, then it is possible to create a sustainable, solid lead gen engine, which is amazing. It's the best thing a business can have.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, yeah, that was great. That was helpful. Now I want to go into kind of a quick lightning round. So these next few questions, looking for like a 10-second answer, like just a quick take on each one.
Sure.
So first, is AI making lead generation better or just noisier?
Both. Better for the smart, intelligent, strategic person, noisier for everybody else, which is to the benefit of the smart, intelligent, strategic person.
What's a popular AI marketing tactic that you think is overrated?
Outbound emails. Just stop already. It doesn't work. And when you send those sequences on LinkedIn, it's just, I open my LinkedIn and I see 5 messages from you spaced beautifully over the course of 7 days, and they're all in a row. It's like so obvious and so annoying. Stop it.
And can AI actually help you build trust with buyers, or do you feel that it does the opposite?
The human has to do it. AI can help the human do it, but I don't believe in fake trust. Fake authenticity. Just, you can fake it for so long, but no longer. It's not sustainable.
What would you never let AI do in your sales process?
I'd never let AI contact anybody automatically, ever. Everything I send is sent by a human. I would never do mass AI automated personalization at scale. Doesn't work, and it's an oxymoron, and which is annoying in itself, and it's extremely inauthentic.
All right. And then on the show, I'd like to have every guest ask a question to the audience. So if you could ask our audience anything, whether something you're curious about or kind of want to get people thinking about, what would that be?
Yeah, so I think the question I would ask any small business owner is, what is the one thing that you can do that the people around you, the people in your vicinity can't, that you can do well, that you understand, that you know about? And often that comes from a combination of two things. It comes from, like with me, I've got 20 years of lead gen experience, and then I spent the last 2 years working on AI, and I was able to combine those. That is unusual. So what can you do? What's your kind of unique perspective? Because that, no one can replicate that. No one can take that away from you. So spend some time thinking of what is that for you.
Yeah, that's great. And Heather, thanks so much for coming on the show. Before we get going, where else can people find you online?
Oh, well, thanks very much. It's been really great being on the show, Brian. I am the best two places to find me are The Humans in the Loop, which is my YouTube channel and my Substack. I write about everything to do with AI and business. And you can find out how to work with me via my website, theaiedit.ai, where I teach you how to roll out the AI edit method so that you can generate loads of leads and be very happy.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Great.
I'd like to take a moment to invite you to join our free community of over 5,000 creators at creatorclimb.com. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more, check out the Heights Platform YouTube channel every Tuesday at 9 a.m. US Central. To get notified when new episodes release, join our newsletter at thecreatorsadventure.com. Until then, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next episode.